You're listening to the Thrive Podcast, where every week we dive into a practical, tactical tip to bring you from a life of simply surviving to thriving. It's personal development for the everyday girl who is done with coasting through her days, done with feeling like she's missing out on the deeper meaning of her own life, and done with mediocrity once and for all. Because it's not enough to simply survive. You deserve to thrive. Welcome back to Thrive. Have you ever dropped your toast on the floor? If it lands butter side down, it's a major bummer, maybe even a damper to your whole day. But if it lands butter side up, it's going to be goodness ahead, right? Today's episode of Thrive is a great conversation with positivity expert Jane Enright, who knows firsthand how sucky life can be. In the span of the same year, she herself suffered a major brain injury that caused her to lose her business and temporarily lose her memory and speech. Her partner suffered a bad car accident, and cancer took her best friend of 40 years. Beyond that, she's had 3 miscarriages and really has just been dealt a lot. But she's here with an inspiring perspective to help you turn your own butter side down moments into what can still be a super awesome life. We talk about the idea of toxic positivity, what it is and what it is not, as well as her specific strategy to get through those OMG moments that change your whole life. Be sure to stay tuned through this episode, drop us your thoughts on social media, and without further ado, welcome Jane.
Thank you so much, Erica. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am so happy you're here. I know you describe yourself as an ordinary person who has survived some extraordinary things, which really hits the nail on the head. So I'm excited to really just jump into the deep end together and talk about all of this in depth. You wrote a book called Butter Side Up, How I Survived My Most Terrible Year and Created My Super Awesome Life, which come on, what an incredible title. But really it stemmed from you had 3 totally life-altering, totally terrible things happen to you in the span of 12 months. So let's just go there right now and tell us who you are and why you're here and what happened.
Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks so much for having me. I like to say I'm a walking, talking infomercial for sudden, rapid, unplanned change. And I truly am an ordinary person that has survived extraordinary things, like many, except my, things happen in threes, and my 3 things happened in the span of 12 months. The first thing was a life-altering head injury. I got hit in the head with a volleyball, not just a little tap, but a poof, like a giant hit to the head, and suffered some deficits as a result. I was like Dory in Finding Nemo. I had short-term memory loss. I had problems with speech. I lost part of my hearing. I had to work with a speech pathologist for 8 months to a year to get back on track. And just as I was, coming out of that, my partner at the time, my fiance, he had his own traumatic injury as well. He had a car accident and a sudden fall. And he had his own catastrophic brain injury, which resulted in a fractured skull and severe bleed to the brain and a 76-day hospital stay. Now, you can imagine with something like that, it's just not business as usual. Things changed, and things changed rapidly for the 2 of us. And he needed a lot of care that I couldn't provide. So just as he was being discharged out of the hospital, as I said, things happen in threes. Unfortunately, my best friend of 40 years got diagnosed with cancer, stage 4 terminal cancer diagnosis. She went into an emergency room and came out with abdominal pain and came out with a terminal diagnosis. And she said, Jane, I need help. And would you help me? And I did. And unfortunately, she didn't have much longer, and she only passed away 3 weeks later. So I spent over 100 days in hospitals helping people I loved navigate a lot of sudden, rapid, unplanned change, including myself. So yes, that's where my journey started, is having, all these unexpected things happen. But as I like to say, 4 things, things that end in a T, 4 letters with ending in a T happen to everyone. It's how you handle it that matters. So I'm talking to you very calmly about this right now, Erica, but it's because I've done a lot of work processing it. And I also learned some tips and tricks along the way to help me, navigate change, because we don't have a textbook. I mean, life is not a textbook.
Absolutely. Although it would be
Especially
easier if
now.
it had it sometimes, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
I know. Well, I can relate to you on that as well, since our daughter was in the NICU for 73 days. So
Wow.
I can empathize with those in the moment feelings of desperation and just despondency when you are, day 60, day 70, and there's just really no end in sight,
Mhm.
and it just drains you. So can you kind of set us up to, so that we can hear your perspective and really get to understand this, what that felt like in the moment for you? Because now it's so easy on the other side, especially once time has healed some wounds and you've done the work, like you said, and processed so much. It can start to feel so distant in a way, and it's hard. So bring us back, if you can, to like what those emotions really were for you, and just how hard that really was.
It was, and thanks for the opportunity to do that, because I'm sure, going through a pandemic now, as all of us are, never on such a global scale have we all been at the same time going through such rapid, unplanned change, and that's what I experienced. So that feeling of being overwhelmed, those feelings of, oh my God, what's next? What's going to happen now? Like, I kept getting hit. I felt like a batter in a batter's cage, just, whapping balls and trying to, not only survive myself, but help the other people in my life, move forward, not backward. So in my former life, before I got hit and had my catastrophic injury, I was a strategic planner. So I spent a lot of time helping businesses navigate change and helping them look at things from the outside in rather than the inside out. And the first step for me, really, in this journey was acceptance. Accepting that things had happened, that things were different. And when I say acceptance, I don't mean I was happy about it. It wasn't like I was saying, oh, well, this happened and here we go. No, no, no. I was just like, holy shoot, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what the next 5 minutes is going to bring, but this has happened and I need to look forward, not backward. And acceptance is really the first step towards navigating any kind of rapid, unexpected change, or any kind of change for that matter, because acceptance keeps you out of resistance and denial, and it moves you forward and helps you move towards a more flexible mindset, so you can get out of that, woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? Like, if only this had happened, or what if I'd done this, or that sort of thing. So that's what I talk about in Butter Side Up, is rapid unplanned change can happen to anyone, but acceptance is really the first step towards navigating it. The second thing that really helped me, and by the way, I wasn't, in my head as I'm going through this, I wasn't saying, oh, well, now I have to think outside in. This is what I reflected on after. But those feelings of being overwhelmed, and again, I talk about it in the book. So when the doctors were telling me all this horrible stuff that was probably going to happen, to my partner, and the things that he was going to have to navigate, I looked at it from the outside in rather than the inside out. And I said to myself, okay, what are the strengths? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities here? What are the threats? And really did a scan. And so that's what really kept me going through those 76 days, is the outside in thinking, looking at the situation as an observer rather than as being in the situation. And Michael Singer talks about this in The Untethered Soul. I don't know whether you've ever read that book.
Mm-mm.
Fabulous book. I'd recommend it to anyone. And it's big picture thinking, and it keeps you out of the weeds, and allows you to find clarity of thought when you need to, as I'm sure you had to when your daughter was in the hospital. Sometimes you have to make some decisions and you're not really sure whether it's going to work out. And it helps you evaluate, it helps you advocate for yourself, and helps you advocate for others. So acceptance, and then that outside in thinking, help me, keep out of the weeds, keep out of the, overthinking, because we can really, our minds can play tricks on us, because we tend to navigate to the negative rather than the positive. So that was the second thing. So when we're saying, oh my gosh, or oh my God, we're asking for help, right? We're saying, what's next? What am I going to do next? So acceptance, and the O for me is the outside thinking, but the M was really mindfulness. Now, it's interesting because we spend a lot of time and money on mindfulness. We go to retreats and we read books, and we look for that magic bullet, but we don't really understand why we're trying to be mindful. And so what a lot of people don't understand too is that mindfulness is a great tool to help you navigate change, because mindfulness helps you stay in the present. It keeps you out of depression, that sadness about the past, that's the woulda, coulda, shoulda, and anxiety about the future, what's going to happen next. So again, I didn't, like you, I didn't know whether my partner was going to recover. I didn't know how far I was going to recover. I didn't know what was going to come next with my friend. I just knew there wasn't a lot of time. And I knew I had to make some decisions to help all of us move forward, not backward. So I like to say outside in thinking helps you plan the route, but mindfulness supports the journey. So you can really, move again, more positive mindset. And again, your listeners that are listening now, we're in the middle of a pandemic. And I always say, put up your hand if you don't know what the next 5 minutes is going to bring. That was my life for 12 months. So I don't have a PhD, but I have a DPE, a doctorate of personal experience. And I've just been through a lot of unusual things. So those were things, that were helping me along. But the final thing, I've always been such a positive person, always. But the other thing that really kept me going was practicing gratitude every day and being thankful for those, those things that were happening. Like I was still healthy and I could help the people I loved. My partner was breathing. He wasn't on he wasn't on a ventilator. He was making progress. And gratitude is really what got me through those final days with my friend, because I got the call that nobody wants to get, but I was so honored that my friend would want me to help her share her final days. And I was very grateful for that. And I didn't know why this was happening. Why was it happening now? Why was I being, thrown, with all these curveballs out of left field? But that's really what saved me in the end, was being grateful for 40 years of friendship. That's longer than most marriages, right? Mm-hmm. And all the lovely times that we shared, and being asked to share her final moments with her and help her on her journey. So those were, I always say life is not a textbook. I talk about it in the book, but I talk about my OMG. I talk about practicing gratitude, and really now, especially during uncertain times, because it doesn't protect you from negativity, but studies have shown that gratitude can really help you stay in a more positive mindset, but it also helps you become more resilient to change as you're going through it. So that's a little bit about what I was thinking. I hope I met the mark there.
For sure. I think gratitude too also just helps you regain your perspective, because I know, I'm sure you can relate to this as well, but it's like when you're in the midst of something that feels like a never-ending shitstorm, for lack of a better word, it can really be hard to find the good. Like it can really just feel like everything is bad, to the point where we mentally snowball into a point of thinking or even believing that life is bad, or that our life is bad. And it starts to have this, instead of just this thing that happened was bad, it now becomes everything is bad. And you lose sight of so much more in that process, and you honestly grieve so much more than you might have had to, just because you're failing to notice the small good things. Of course, they might not be nearly to the scale of how big the bad things are, but it still at least helps you maintain some sense of perspective of like, okay, even though this really horrible thing is happening, it's not going to be forever. Maybe it
Exactly.
is, but that doesn't mean that life is going to be bad forever. It doesn't mean that life as a whole is bad.
Yeah.
It just sheds some light on the good that is still there amidst everything else that's going on that's not great.
Exactly. You know what? Well said. And that's what I love I love the premise of Thrive, your podcast, because that's what Butter Side Up is all about. You know, the tumbling toast theory. As a society, we do have a tendency to think of life more negatively than positively. If your toast drops, that's the prologue in the book. If your toast drops on the floor and it lands butter side down, full of icky stuff that you don't want, it's like, oh, that's it. My day's ruined, right? But if it lands butter side up, it's going to be a good day. So it's all about taking the things in life and learning how to successfully navigate change, because life is change. It is a series of changes, especially now, and looking at it in a different way, so you can take some lemons and make lemonade. And again, I wanted to not only tell readers what happened to me, but show them that there can be joy and happiness after unplanned, unexpected events. I mean, there's two kinds of change. There's planned and unplanned. Planned change is really a conscious decision, like getting your driver's license, or I'm going to have children, or I'm going to lay off the pizza and bulk up on the kale salads. Unplanned change is a consequence or a circumstance, like a pandemic, or maybe an illness or a divorce, or some unexpected thing that crops up. But you know what? The book, I would never have written a book. I didn't sit down and say, oh gosh, you know what? One day I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to write a book about unplanned change. I don't think that ever would have happened if all of these things hadn't happened to me. So sometimes out of something bad, something good can come. And you're right. Practicing gratitude can help you illuminate the path and show you and give you a little bit of hope that, okay, maybe everything's not so bad here. Maybe there can be, things. And then moving forward, not backward, into that planned change after all the trauma and drama. Your past is just a chapter, not the whole book.
Mm-hmm. Where do you think the intersection is, or how people can kind of navigate when planned change becomes unplanned? Like I know you mentioned having children as a planned change. And I have so many girlfriends who are going through this right now, where they want so desperately to be a mom, are doing everything in their human power to plan a pregnancy, and then they receive the heartbreaking news of infertility, or that there's something wrong, or it's just not happening, which is then such an unplanned wrench in the game. So
Yes.
what advice do you have for kind of navigating that, where you're in the headspace for a plan change and you're like thinking you're ready for that, but then something else happens that totally is a wrench in the game, and now you're like, whoa, I don't even know which way is up, let alone how I feel about any of the changes that are in my path?
Throws you a curveball. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, I don't talk about that in the book, but I struggled with some of those things too. I had some miscarriages before I had two lovely, lovely, healthy sons. And so I can understand what that feels like, to not have it work out the way you thought. I think for me, really having faith that things, for whatever reason, things happen for a reason. And sometimes nice things don't happen, but they happen. And trying to, think about it in a sense that I don't know, we don't have to know why, we don't have to know how, but just trying to say, you know what, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to find support, because you do need support. First of all, anyone that's going through tough times needs a support system. So talking with other people, and you know what? It's not just you. First, you're not alone. You're not alone. Second of all, it is a very stressful time, and taking care of yourself is what's most important, and doing things that are good for you. Now, people talk about self-love. I think that's a very overused term. But first of all, taking care of yourself and getting yourself into a space where you're supported and you can go through that process. But the acceptance part, this has happened. I don't know why it's happened, but I'm going to move forward. I know something's going to work out. That might be you will have a child someday, or it might be that you're going to adopt. It might be that you're not going to have children and you might find something else in your life that's more fulfilling. It might be that you develop a wonderful career as a teacher. I don't know. There's different scenarios that can happen in our lives. But the acceptance part, and also having faith that things can get better, I think that's very important. And not the toxic positivity stuff, like everything's wonderful, happy, because first of all, it's okay to not be okay. But it's also understanding that, I mean, I'm a perfect example. I can't believe I'm sharing this, but you're asking me. I had 3 miscarriages before I had 2 beautiful, healthy boys. So, and it was hard. It was very traumatic for me. But again, everything worked out in the end. Now, is everybody's life going to be the same as mine? No. But just believing that somehow, some way, things are going to work out as they should, and
Mm-hmm.
getting the help that you need and taking care of yourself in that space, surrounding yourself with people that will help you, move forward, not backward, is very, very important. And your OMG, that outside in, thinking about things, that mindfulness, that gratitude.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you mentioned that phrase, because that's, especially since you're now called a positivity expert, I feel like you're probably the expert to talk about this as well. What do you think about that phrase, toxic positivity? Like, I want to unpack that for a second, because I hear that so much and it has such a negative connotation to it. And I feel like it works a lot to try to diminish a lot of positivity. So can you kind of break down, what does that mean to you? What does that look like? And then how is everything that you talk about and teach and share not that?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, I think in terms of, first of all, it's like a double entendre, toxic and positively, like they're two totally ends
Mm-hmm.
of the
Well, I mean,
spectrum.
I've always heard it
Yeah,
used in terms of people who think that someone is just pushing this
right.
unrealistic, positive, everything's coming up roses, ha ha ha, pun intended, since that's
Right.
my blog name. But
Yeah.
that it's really just this everything is sunshiny perspective that negates the hardships of reality, and where it's just kind of like that's what it is, where it just negates the
Exactly.
hardship of
And
reality.
and that no, and I agree with you. And the thing is too, I mean, I talk about it in the book. Everyone has stuff. Life is not perfect. Life is not a bed of roses. And hard stuff, tough stuff happens to all of us, but it's how you handle it that matters. And for example, um, you know, I don't know why I was thrown all these curveballs in my life. But the only way I can rationalize it is that I was meant to help my friends and help myself and learn some skills so that I could help others. That's how I rationalized it. Toxic positivity, I think, for me, is being unrealistic that your life will be a bed of roses, that everything will be super cool all the time and stay the same all the time. You know, I think accepting fear is a big barrier to change. We all are fearful. Put up your hand if you are, have ever heard anybody say I hate change. That's because most people do, right? And where I think where the toxic positivity comes in is that people are not, when something does happen and somebody says, listen, one of the ways you can make things better or help yourself through that is to try and have a more positive mindset. They say, oh, well, that's a bunch of, that's a bunch of crap,
Easy for
right?
you to
Because
say.
easy for you to say,
Yeah.
right? I'm here to tell you it's not easy. It takes work. It takes work. So for me, positivity means really consciously saying, I'm choosing happiness. I'm choosing to look at change, embrace change, not fear it. I'm choosing to look at this situation more positively and help myself use some tips and tricks that I know, whether it be outside in thinking, looking at the big picture, looking at things, using affirmations, Louise Hay was really the grandmother of this, of affirmations. And our thoughts are very powerful things. And, if we tell ourselves our life is bad, I believe we are what we believe. And I've seen that happen. I've seen miracles happen in my life. I've seen a lot of shitty things happen in my life, but I've seen my life do a total 360, you know. So, I'm not, toxic positivity is really unrealistic. Looking at change unrealistically and looking at, sometimes we need to have those bad days so we can really appreciate the good ones. And I think COVID-19 is really a wake-up call for the whole world, to say, look at what's important to you, what's important to you. Slow down, really look at your life, relationships. People are reevaluating their relationships. People are reevaluating their jobs. For example, a lot of people have lost or will lose a job or change the way they're working. Some people will look at it as a loss and not be able to move forward and be very angry about it. And it's okay to be angry about it. It's okay to say a pandemic came and mucked up my life and I'm not happy about this. That's the difference between acceptance and toxic positivity. Acceptance is saying, okay, I accept this has happened. I'm not happy about it. But when I went through all this stuff, I said, look, I'm not doing hard and sad anymore. I'm not doing this. I want a super awesome life. So what am I, envisioning what you want. The person that looks at it like that and can't get into acceptance will have a very different experience than the person that can get into acceptance and say, okay, I'm not really crazy about this. I'm really worried about my finances. I don't know how I'm going to make my next mortgage payment, but you know what? This is an opportunity for me to change and maybe do something that I've always wanted to do. Right?
I think the difference too in going off of everything that you're saying is allowing yourself to feel negative feelings. It's like, I think a difference in I always think of toxic positivity as kind of glossing over the bad things and just being like, oh, no, everything's going to be great. It's going to be great. It's awesome. Everything is great. Life is great. It's just all great. And in doing so, you're not actually acknowledging the inevitable bad things that are there. You're just ignoring it. And then you're just gathering it all under your rug. And one day you're going to trip over the rug and probably have a nervous breakdown. So it's it's the difference is you're still very much acknowledging and to what you said, accepting the very real, not happy, not positive feelings that you feel. And then you're processing it in a healthy way to be able to move forward from it in a productive way that allows you to live the rest of your life, not being a bitter, sad, resentful person.
Yes, exactly. And that's what that's what I did for years, before my life got interrupted. I mean, when I had my accident and I had my speech and hearing interrupted, I talked for a living. I spoke for a living. I interviewed senior executives, presidents of companies. I got paid thousands of dollars a day. And I couldn't do that anymore because people wouldn't pay me thousands of dollars a day to say, sorry, what was your name again? Could you wear a name tag? The presidents don't like to do that, right? Or, gosh, you know what? I didn't quite hear that. Could you repeat yourself? I had to change when things happen and like say, for example, your partner comes home and says, you know what? I don't think I want to be in this relationship anymore. That's a tough one. That's a tough thing. I'm just giving, real life examples here. But when bad stuff happens, we often look for others or the situation to change. But the only thing we can control is ourselves, right? And how we handle it and how we look at it. And I think, I think you make an excellent point. Ignoring it and glossing over what's happened is not the solution. And that's what I talk about in Butter Side Up, is looking at it very constructively, very objectively, because business people do this all the time. They say, look, if we're not flexible of mind and keep on changing and responding to our customers' needs, we're going to be out of business. And that's what your life is going to be like. If you're not willing to change yourself, then yes, that toxic positivity, that resentment, that feeling like a victim rather than someone who can move forward and go beyond putting a label. I'm divorced, or I'm unemployed, or I'm an addict, or whatever. We've seen, COVID is really a big test for all of us now, and we're all in this together. And practicing kindness and being good to yourself first, so you can be good to other people. I always say it's like going into the airplane and put the flight attendant tells you to put on your oxygen mask. Be kind to yourself. If something's happening in your life, and be kind to yourself and say, you know what, this is tough. This is tough. I accept that this has happened. I don't like it, but you know what? Using some OMG, surrounding yourself with like-minded people, getting a support system in place, starting to sometimes experiencing what you don't want helps you move forward and get what you do want out of life.
Mm-hmm. So for anyone listening, looking at something like the pandemic that we're obviously still in, I think it's probably safe to say that maybe we're all past the point of acceptance now, just because it's almost been a year. So everyone's like, all right, this is reality. Yep. But for anyone listening who might still be struggling with the unknowns ahead, maybe still feeling frustrated at a lack of answers, or seeming like a lack of progress, or someone who's very much still hurting from a job loss or the loss of a loved one, where they're like, all right, I've accepted this. I understand OMG. But like, what can I do tomorrow to feel better? Like, what advice would you give for someone who wants to start adopting that more positive mindset, wants to start going in a positive direction, but maybe doesn't want to feel disingenuous in the process? How do you kind of begin to work through that and move forward?
Right. I think the first step is every ending is a new beginning. Every ending is a new beginning. Your past is just a chapter, not the whole book. You don't have to, we're often look at our life as a sum of our total experiences to date. We put a label on ourselves, and get rid of the label. The past is the past. Let it go, and just say, you know what, I'm going to let the past go, and I'm going to look at this as a fresh new start. It's like one big AA meeting. Okay, one day at a time. One day at a time, trying to stay present and getting some support to do that. There's lots of resources out there. I mean, there's obviously resources on my website, My Super Awesome Life. I mean, everybody deserves a super awesome life. You have to believe that you deserve a super awesome life, though. You have to really, truly believe and have faith that things can be different, and that you can take control of your life and control the things you can control and make those things happen. Take advantage of those programs out there. If you don't have a support system in place, if you sometimes letting go of the past also means letting go of situations or people in your life that are not good for you. And have you ever seen those Tyler Perry videos, Medina videos? Mm-hmm. She's got a great video. Let it go. Easier said than done. But, you might have to say that to yourself over and over and over again, or the Louise Hay mantra, all is well. You know what? Everything's going to work out. Everything happens for a reason. All is well. Everything's happening for a greater good here. I'm safe. I'm going to get through this. And big picture thinking, and deciding, what happened and what you don't want, so you can move forward. And I talk about that in the book, taking a scan of your life and saying, forward from here, where do I want to be? You have to visualize that new storyline, right? Create the new storyline for yourself. What's the chapter that you want to write? What's the new storyline that you want to write a year from now? Living your life intentionally. Because once you do that, you really decide that you create happiness. You don't find it.
So true. Absolutely. Well, Jane, this has been an absolute pleasure. Now I'm going to ask you a question that I ask everybody who comes on to Thrive. And that is...
Okay, no pressure.
No pressure. What does thrive mean to you? And how do you strive to thrive in your everyday life?
Oh, wow. I love that question. First of all, I love you. I love your show. I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
I think, keeping connected and being in spaces where with people that lift you up and don't bring you down is so important. And I see you as a very important part of the equation here. So thank you, Erica, for what you do every day, because you're inspiring me as I'm talking to you. It's an absolute, I'm very grateful that I've been here and talking with you today and able to share some ideas and tips and tricks with people. Thriving for me really means living the best life that you can live, having those experiences that when you look back, you can say, wow, you know what? I don't know what happened or why that happened, but boy, you know what? I landed butter side up, I landed butter side up, and look at all the joyful experiences that I have. It's living an intentional life, living a joyful life. It's living a life that, and sharing that life with others, in the same space as me.
That's awesome. So tell us all where people can connect with you online if they want to find out more about you, find out more about your community, or pick up a copy of Butter Side Up.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So I've got my superawesomelife.com, just my superawesomelife.com, where we have a monthly newsletter. We have some tips and tricks to help inspire you to create your new storyline, help you create your new storyline, support you to do that and move forward and successfully navigate unplanned change so you can land butter side up. We've also got, of course, the book. You can go on to JaneEnrightAuthor.com to find out. It's at Barnes and Noble, Amazon.com, really, wherever books are sold. I'm on social media, Jane Enright 20, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. But yeah, just that's how you can reach out to me. And I'm so very grateful to you that you reached out to me and allowed me the opportunity to be here today.
Wait, before you go, make sure you're subscribed to never miss an episode of Thrive. Drop 5 stars on your way out if you like what you just listened to, and come join the party on Instagram at thrive.podcast to stay inspired and thriving all week long. Thanks for tuning in. It's your time to thrive.